The bliss of the abyss, it's here now.
Welcome back to the Bliss of the Abyss. My name's Robin Neumark Jones. Thank you for joining me on this fine afternoon, which is probably when this shall be published. It's August. The sun is shining. I'm feeling alive. I'm feeling good. What's this? A whole spatchcock barbecue chicken? Goodness me, I will indulge. I hope you're having a lovely summer. I am indeed. Today's episode is with one of my favourite people and one of the most requested, most repeat guests on this show, Mr. Tom Leo. Something a bit bittersweet about this episode, as he shall be soon departing. But there'll be a special episode recorded because of that. One second.
The bliss of the abyss is here now.
Sorry if there's a bit more ambient noise today. The windows are open. The studio is hot. And as such, I'm recording on my USB microphone. That's why, for the audio files, you might notice it's not quite as high quality. But listen, this is how we record on Zoom, you see. Anyway, let me not fanny around any longer with this silly intro, and instead introduce to you my friend, the hilarious Thomas Leo. Recording in progress. There we go.
Fantastic. What AI voices kind of, I don't know, sometimes they really, really annoy me, and other times I'm like, yeah, it's kind of sci-fi, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, it feels like life is a little bit of a science fiction film now, or at least a schlocky B-grade science fiction TV show.
I like the schlockier B-grade ones. I don't like the ones where they're trying to sound like they are a human.
No, God, no. You don't want it to be too convincing.
No, because it's not convincing. So you think, stop trying to convince me. Like I got a spam call the other day, and it did that. I don't know how they have to fix this technology. I mean, they don't. I'm glad they haven't fixed it because it's helping scammers. But you get the scam call and it goes, boop, and then they start talking. And you're like, well, no real phone call begins. Boop.
No.
So I just know that they're scamming. But it went boop, and then it was, hello, I am Hannah, calling from building repair. And I'm like, you're not Hannah. You don't exist. Good.
Yeah, you don't have the only letters in your name are part of your barcode, mate.
But if it had just been like the usual AI voice, I wouldn't have been as offended. I'd have been like, okay, yeah, they're saving a bit of money. They've used your text-to-speech. Okay. They could have employed me. I'd do a better job.
Yeah, voice actors instead of AI. Jesus. Come on now.
Hi, do you have pensions or savings that you're to frit away?
Yeah. Are you willing to give me access to your bank accounts?
You ever been scammed?
Not that I'm willing to admit.
Oh!
No, not that I can recall. I mean, I think the closest thing to a scam that I've ever experienced is like overpaying for something that was really like, I don't even know if it was in Bali, but I do distinctly remember paying for something and thinking, there's no way it's this expensive over here. Like I bought like a pair of t-shirts and I bought Ash a dress at some point, I think. Yeah. And I remember walking away thinking, that wasn't a bargain.
Yeah.
Like you might expect it to be. Like we're paying cents for things here. Yeah. And I've just paid dollars for something. But that's about as close as I've ever gotten. And also in those situations, you're like, but that money means a lot more to them than it does to me.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And if you get too caught up in that, like I've had it before in like East Asia and stuff where you're like, bartering is part of the fun, it's part of the culture. Yes. But if you get too caught up in it and it gets like a bit acrimonious, you end up sort of like walking away, whether you've made the sale or not, being like, that was over 50p. What am I doing?
Exactly. Yeah.
I need to get my priorities straight. That doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
there's a bit of a cultural thing, right? Like a fine line you have to toe between not bartering so much that it's a bit rude. It's
Yeah.
like they're just paying sticker prices, like, and they're like, that's not what we do here, but whatever.
Yeah.
And then also bartering too hard, where it's just like you are quibbling over, change, the kind of change that you probably wouldn't even bother to transfer into a change jar anymore.
Yeah,
You just like leave it loose at the bottom of your car or something like that.
exactly. Although I did actually do it recently here. So do you know what Vinted is?
Yeah. The app.
The app.
The app where you
Like
sell your
Vinted.
clothes.
Sell your clothes. Caitlin started selling her clothes. So we're, times are tough. She enjoys having a little shop for things.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, what is this app you're using? So I downloaded it. I was looking at it. I was like, oh, it's kind of cool. I need a new pair of jeans. So I looked up a pair of jeans, found this guy. He had them listed for 10 quid. So I was like, all right, I'll send him an offer.
Yeah.
$7.50. Right? So, it's an opening offer. You don't have to accept it. He comes back and he's like, mate, there's no way I'm selling these for less than 8 quid. They're £100 pair of jeans. And I was like, okay, dude, look, I didn't know they're £100 pair of jeans. You've got them listed for a tenner.
I was going to say, he's offended that you've not offered him £8. You've offered him $7.50. He's already put them on for 10% of the original price.
Yeah.
Good Lord. It's not like you listed them for 50 and then you were like, no, I'll give you $7.50 for them, mate. Come on.
I would have been bold. Yeah.
Yeah, he was clearly having fun thinking he was haggling there.
Well, he actually ended up selling them to me for $7.50. So jokes on him.
Yeah, of course he did. It's funny. I was actually thinking of downloading Vinted the other day because we're selling off a bunch of stuff before we go. And
right.
If it's easy to use, I'll download it and start the process.
Super easy to use. Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's good. I think we've pulled off that really covert guerrilla advert for Vinted. I don't think your listeners are going to cut on to the fact that we're paid shills for big Vinted.
Definitely not. And I mean, if they wanted a coupon code, then Tom Leo 80 does work.
It does.
That's just a coincidence.
It's not anything to do with me. It just happens to be my name and a number, and it was only available for the next 6 months. So there's nothing to do with us.
Indeed. How's the beard going? What's going on there?
How's the beard going?
Yeah, I mean, what's the end game here?
The end game is that I will eventually die and cease growing, but not until several months after my death. Because you do, is it several months or several weeks? I don't know.
That it keeps growing, but it
does keep growing beyond death. Yeah,
no, it doesn't. Bullshit.
As will my legacy.
Bullshit.
Yeah, fingers, nails, hair, fingernails, hair.
Okay,
all keep growing.
First fact check of presumably many.
Oh, definitely many.
Keep growing after. I should have put post-mortem to look like I really knew what I was talking about.
I mean, you've said it. I think your listeners will know that you were purposefully dumbing down for them. They don't all have your medical pedigree.
Okay, Tom, you're wrong. Death puts a stop to the supply of glucose and therefore to fingernail growth. A similar process occurs for hair. They may appear longer, but not because they are still growing.
Okay. So they grow, but not literally. They increase in length without growing. How are they defining growth here?
Here we go. After death, dehydration causes the skin and other soft tissues to shrink. Okay. It's the illusion. That's
an easy mistake to make. All the dead bodies I've been looking at, I didn't realize they were shrinking. I thought the nails and hair were growing. That's my bad. Sorry, everyone.
It could be partly because you're collecting their fingernails and hair and putting them in little baggies that you're labeling for your collection.
Yeah, but it's hard to get to a body right upon death because
Which
there's all
is
the
what you
cops
want,
and stuff.
ideally.
Ideally, that's what you'd want. But
Of
yeah, no, I get there when I can. You know, I do my thing. It's for science.
Do my thing.
Yeah, it's for science. It's all above board.
It's your hobby.
It's a hobby. It's a proclivity. It's a calling, really. If anything, it's a calling because they do literally call to me. I can hear them calling.
After
Give me a
they
trim.
died as well.
Yeah, give me a trim. I want to look really good in my coffin.
It's the same thing with not quite the same thing with ears and noses that people think that they grow the older you get.
Yeah,
They look bigger, but it's just because the cartilage and gravity. That's all that is.
really. So
Yeah,
this is all stuff that was said as though it was fact when I was growing up.
yeah. There's loads of shit like that, though, isn't there? It's
Yeah.
What are they? I mean, I feel like it's unfair that they're called old wives' tales.
Because they should be called
old cunts' tales, I guess. every bastard tells them. It's not just old wives who are doing it.
That is true. Yeah, it's not all on the wives.
Let's find some old wives' tales that are actually true. Bored Panda or BuzzFeed? Too late. We're going Bored Panda.
Yeah, I would have chosen Bored Panda.
You think BuzzFeed's time is up?
I think BuzzFeed was over before it started, really.
Oh,
yeah, no, I was never
sell
a fan.
for billions at one point.
Oh, probably, yeah. I mean,
but that doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, it matters to the people who bought it, you know. But I never was big on listicles, and I heard that the way they treated their staff was pretty appalling.
Yeah.
You know, and they also, you know, they had a lot of their content was very much like, are you doing a good thing for our species, or are you just really locking in on that lowest common denominator and cashing out?
And I think it's kind of telling that a lot of their content, to go back to AI briefly, has been replaced by AI because it is really like low effort listing stuff. It's like that's super easy for a computer to just chew in, spit out.
Oh, absolutely. It's all over YouTube at the moment as well. There's plenty of that kind of stuff coming through.
Yeah.
Or shorts and all that kind of thing. They just clip different parts that have been repeatedly viewed on longer format videos, or it'll just literally just clip a video down into segments that sound to an AI like it's, you know, a little pithy little part of a larger overall conversation. And then based on the upvotes and downvotes and the retention of viewers that it gets and the repeated plays that it gets, it'll discern what is and isn't good content to create in shortened format. So it's self-learning, which is pretty cool. It's also a little scary, but it's pretty cool mostly.
Who benefits from this?
The people running the AI, the people monetizing the content.
Why aren't we?
Well, because we're not that smart, mate. I just got fingernails and hair wrong, okay? I'm not coding AI. I don't know how this stuff works.
Right, and that's your hobby, and you still got it wrong. Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hang on. My hobby is collecting the stuff. It's not knowing about it.
Okay, right, fair enough. If your hobby becomes your job, is it called a jobby? Thanks. Thank you very much.
I'm not even going to comment on that. It was perfect, just the way it was.
These are old wives' tales. They're actually true. Gargling with salt water helps a sore throat. Yep.
Yep, my mum told me that one.
My mum did tell me that one. And she's a very old wife.
Mine's not, but she's
my newest wife, but she's an old wife.
Yeah. The honey was the other one for sore throats.
Yeah.
Presumably antimicrobial properties, but I don't know how true that is either.
And throbbing erections as well. They really help.
With honey.
Well, sure.
Actually, I think that's
man honey.
That's more of a young wives' tale, if you know what I mean. Put some honey on it; it'll mask the taste.
I'm googling young wives' tales, but I'm worried as to what I'm going to find.
If you've got safe search on, mate, nothing's going to come up.
I very much don't. Maybe I should.
Oh, you use Ecosia as well. That's cool. They're the tree planting ones, hey?
They're the tree people, yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
I hope they're not lying to me.
I mean, even if they are, it's nice to feel like you're making a positive difference, even if you're not really doing anything. Isn't that half the reason we, recycle and all that other stuff? Is to make us feel like we're making a difference, in the grand scheme of the, total emissions of the planet, it makes very little difference.
Very little difference. And you always run into the occasional person who goes, most of that ends up in landfill.
Yeah.
And you think, well, you know what? Most of you end up in landfill.
Yeah, I was going to say, it does, but that might be true, but it makes me feel better. And really, as one person in, 8-9 billion who has not much power, maybe voting, maybe where I spend my money, sometimes feeling better about myself is the only contribution I'm making to the world. That's all I'm doing, and yes, it's a little self-centered, but hey, I've got to live in this head.
I feel like if I change Young Wives' Tales, by the way, for those only listening, is a novel by Adele Parks. So I don't know, it doesn't look particularly interesting. If I spent Tales the other way,
then your top search would be Pornhub.
I'm hoping someone's done it.
Or fairies. Could be fairies.
The bliss of the abyss is here now.
No, there seems like it's almost there's only 2 hits.
And one of them is about marijuana and the other seems to be about RPMs in 5th gear.
Wanting to lower my RPM.
Oh, so that's like motoring.
I guess.
Yeah.
I know so little about motoring and care even less.
Yeah, me too.
Chagrin of my father-in-law, who's a complete gearhead.
Yeah, my dad's a bit of a gearhead, and I used to race motocross when I was younger, and really? I think that was the time during which we vibed the most, was when I raced motocross, which of course he was all about as well. But I only really did it because I was like, I'll give it a shot. I ride motorbikes anyway. I never really took to it. It just doesn't interest me,
Yeah.
It's fun, but it's just fun. It's just not like my kind of fun.
I've done it like a couple of times on holiday for like, with a few friends or with some family, like, tool around the course. That's fun.
Yeah.
I can imagine getting into like the competitive world of it and like having to do it all the time. I just don't see the appeal. It's like dusty, the constant stink of engine and grease and the
there's a lot of that.
I just don't want to spend my time doing that.
No, but you got to be passionate about it. I had some guys I went to high school with who were quite good, and I knew some guys who were friends of my dad's who were like, I don't know if they were nationally ranked, but they might have been state ranked. And they just the level of skill difference between us was just utterly insane. Like I didn't know if at the time I was like, am I just on a really slow bike, or am I too heavy for the size bike that I'm on? I was like, why are they able to go so much faster than I am? Yeah. And then of course I realized that because they are way, way better at doing this thing. They know when to accelerate. They can start in 2nd gear. I tried starting in 2nd gear once. I nearly did a freaking backflip. Yeah.
Which would have been cool.
It would have been cool. Not so cool when you're at the start line and you end up on your head, but
no,
it still
would
have been
Start
entertaining.
the race with an actual full backflip and then zoom off. That is such a flex on the other riders, even if you don't win.
Yeah, absolutely.
But one of the things though is that they might have had a slightly better bike. That's what always pisses me off about like some of those sports, like F1 or something. It's like obviously you're all very talented, but you're not all riding exactly the same vehicle.
No.
So there's some element of you winning that is just like your hardware is better than someone else's.
Yeah, I think it's one of those sports where a big part of it is the engineering team behind the machine as well as the person. It's not like chess where, unless you've got assistance from a sex toy and a co-conspirator, you've only got like yourself playing on the same chessboard that anyone. It wasn't, allegedly. But yeah, no, you do have a whole team at your back, and that team is really, it's kind of like in boxing and mixed martial arts, where it's like you've got your cornermen and you've also got all your training partners and your dojo. Like if you train with the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor or the best Muay Thai instructor, are you not getting a little bit of a head start over your competitor?
You are, but like in team sports, you've got a coach as well. You've got coaches, you run drills, you've got people to. But when you're actually out there, all they can do is sort of like shout encouragement at you, or like the occasional bit of advice. Yeah, exactly. It's like still on the machine, I suppose. But
what about fencing? Do they have different sabers in fencing or different poles in pole vault? Because like I get what you mean. If one person's car is just better, then that is an unfair advantage. But you could also take that and they make it teams, don't they? It's Ferrari versus Porsche or whatever. Yeah. I remember they banned a guy from foot races because he had no legs and he was on fins. That was a debate we had during my sports science time. I don't know if it was Pistorius because I first became aware of him due to a Cat Williams stand-up comedy set where he refers to him as Tink Tink because that's the noise that his blades made on the ground. And the whole like punchline for the thing was poor little Tink Tink.
Right.
Which, I don't know if that's a particularly appropriate way to refer to the guy, but Cat Williams makes it work because he's Cat Williams.
Yeah, he's Cat Williams.
He is very funny. So, but yeah, it was an interesting debate to have with people because, you got a bunch of people around all studying sports science, all very aware of the differences in training modalities and genetic variation within individuals and then technical variation. And it's like, are you cheating if you use something that is designed to make you functional like a person who doesn't have, their limbs amputated, but then it makes you super functional? Because of course these blades don't get fatigued. They don't have tendons. They don't have muscles. They don't have bones. They're made from, carbon fiber or aluminium or whatever they're made from.
But they're not setting out to cheat. Like
no.
they didn't choose this setup. Do you know what I mean?
They didn't. Yep.
Presumably, 100%. Unless they're one of those weirdos who likes to amputate themselves.
Let's hope not.
But what do you think about the enhanced games then? Have you heard about this?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Do you?
Yeah, so
mad and it's never going to happen. I'd like to hear your opinion.
I would like to see it happen because there's this thing in elite level sport where it's kind of accepted amongst, you've obviously heard of people like Lance Armstrong and all that blood doping stuff. It's kind of just accepted at high level in some sports. It's accepted at a high level that everybody is cheating. And it's one of those things where if you're in certain circles, like obviously I now come from more of a lifting perspective, more from a bodybuilding side of things.
Yeah.
PED use in bodybuilding it's not just rampant. It's
de rigueur.
It's the norm in competitive circles. And it's the norm to a point where there are now natural leagues for bodybuilding. The same is true, I believe, for a lot of powerlifting and other strength sports. Yeah. So to me, it's a case of, well, if you give people only one league they can compete in, and anybody starts using performance-enhancing drugs and they set the standard, and the only way to meet that standard, because those drugs really work, that's why people take them and will accept the risks of taking them.
Right.
But if you have only one league and the standard is set by someone on PEDs, there's no way to compete except for with PEDs. But if you create two leagues, one that is simply untested and the other which is rigorously tested, then everybody kind of knows without having to say it overtly. If you want to stay natural, you go for the tested league. And if you want to do the other stuff, then you go to the untested league. And that way the audience can decide what it is they value. Because I'm big on personal freedoms and personal choice and responsibility. So if I'm the kind of person who's going to pay to see a bodybuilding show, which I'm not, because I'm not that interested. But if I were, I would pay for a natural bodybuilding show. I don't think I'd pay for an enhanced show. Are the enhanced guys more physically impressive? Absolutely. I mean, that's where you get the people who are famous for bodybuilding. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Ronnie Coleman, Chris Bumstead is now a big name. These guys are enhanced. And where it's legal, they'll admit to being enhanced. It's just in a lot of places it's not legal, so they're not going to incriminate themselves on camera. But for me, I'm not even a competitive anything, right? But I am a recreational bodybuilder. So if I'm going to go and look at a bodybuilding show, I want to see people who are doing the stuff that I'm doing, which is taking their natural genetics, their training, their nutrition, doing everything they can naturally, and then seeing what the result is, in a way that I'm not willing to do, because I'm not going to diet for as long as I'd need to get that lean. But if you're a consumer of those things, if you are entertained by sports, you get to choose. Do you want to watch the people who are doing things naturally? Or do you want to watch some guy who is at a level that no human being could naturally achieve?
Okay, I hear your position. That's good points.
Play devil's advocate.
Here's my main thing against the enhanced games and why I think it might never happen.
Yep.
So obviously, I agree with you. There's cheating is rampant in a number of things. I think the Lance Armstrong thing, it was something like once they caught him, they had to go down to number 17, something like that, to find someone who wasn't also on the blood doping stuff.
I've heard even bigger numbers. Yep.
It's a crazy number that they had to strike out. That's how endemic it was. And I'm sure there's tons of other sports. There's the Icarus documentary as well, which goes into a lot of what was happening with the Russians and how they were cheating.
Mm-hmm.
So, all of that's been going on, but it's been going on with the explicit understanding that, hey, we could be caught. So we try not to push it too far, and we try and come up with these creative ways to take a bit and then come off it for a bit. And then when I'm clean, but I've actually got some advantage, and then maybe I can go on it for a little bit more. And it kind of naturally tempers the amount that some people will do.
Yep, sure. It's cycling. Yep.
Cycling. Now, if you take away that threat of sanction and you get stuff like the international bodybuilding stuff, where it's just like, just go for it. Those guys get ridiculously jacked. They look like cartoons and they fucking die.
They do. That's very true.
They all fucking die.
Yep. May I offer a counterpoint to your devil's advocacy?
Yeah, go on.
You're completely correct. That is a very big tempering factor. If you have to try and avoid detection, you will only take as much as you can either flush from your system or as you can mask with other substances.
Yeah,
that's completely and utterly true, especially when you have things like endurance events where they're doing EPO more than they're doing steroids or other androgenic substances.
Yeah.
So, you're completely correct. My counterpoint to that would be that because of that, they may do things which are similarly deleterious to their health in order to mask. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, you may find people who are they're simultaneously not taking substances which are protective in effect that you will find. So with open bodybuilders, there's actually entire businesses set up around pharmaceutical enhancement. And when you get to a certain level of gear use, you are basically meant to take a whole series of compounds which act as protectors against the damage that the actual performance enhancers are doing, right? So, for example, you've heard of testosterone replacement therapy, right? So that's when you go on a physiological dose of testosterone.
Yeah.
Steroids, you might start with a baseline supra-physiological dose of testosterone. Basically, you take enough exogenous hormone that your hormone levels go above what is physiologically within normal ranges. And that might be your introduction to performance-enhancing drugs in a strength sport or in bodybuilding. The further up you go in your dosages and the more additional compounds you start adding in for various effects, and because not every hormone agrees with every person and not everyone can just bump up dosages of one thing indefinitely. But the more you run into issues surrounding various side effects. So, for example, I'm in no way, shape or form an expert in this. This is all me listening to people who are experts and regurgitating what they've said. If you have people who, for example, you start to get kidney issues, right, or liver issues, then you might need to start taking things to prevent those issues from becoming, very medically significant, or at least medically significant in the short term, meaning they're going to kill you pretty soon. And I believe that this is especially true when you take orals. So you take a pill or a tablet instead of injectables, because they're dealt with differently in the
Processed
system.
differently in the body.
Yeah.
So what can you take if you're fucking up your liver though? What have they got? They've got nothing, have they? Milk.
They've got they've got protective substances. So similarly, if you have a medical condition, you can take a medicine to prevent that. Well, if you're giving yourself a particular symptom via exogenous hormone use or via, any sort of PED, there are things that you can take. For example, and again, not an expert, so I may be completely wrong in what I'm about to say.
This is me, advice.
Not medical. Oh, God, no, this isn't even advice. If anything, this should be a horror story to keep people from doing this crap.
Don't do this.
Right? But I believe I can remember a time, I believe I can remember talking about EPO when I was doing my sports science degree, because the guys who ran our sports science department I think they were much bigger in the endurance community than in strength or other forms of competition. And I believe they talked a lot about EPO and the potential harmful side effects. And I think one of the things that it can do is thicken your blood significantly. And so I believe I remember someone mentioning somebody else, a professional athlete, potentially doing EPO, which is considered blood doping. You take out your blood, you run it through, I think, a centrifuge. It takes out the components that you want a lot of in your body, and then you re-inject it. And the side effect of that is you've got more literal, little bits in your blood to help with your performance. It might help in getting oxygen to the cells or carbon dioxide away from the cells, or exactly, improving your VO2 max and other types of fitness metrics. But the side effect might be really thick blood. And of course, if you're pumping really thick blood through your system whilst competing at the highest level of competition, you could very well keel over from, a heart attack or something like that. So I think some of the people were actually trying to titrate dosages of blood thinner while simultaneously thickening their blood through these other forms of performance enhancement. And to me, when it comes to a philosophical issue of, if we know people are cheating, do we stop them from cheating, or do we enable them to cheat in the safest way possible, and then take people who don't want to cheat at all and just give them a separate place to do their thing? Because to me, I don't want to see a guy on a bodybuilding stage, on a natural bodybuilding stage, who isn't natural. I do want to see a genetic freak. Yeah, if you've got somebody who's natural, but they look like they're on something because they're just so incredible looking. And there are guys out there who do look like you see them. If you aren't familiar with natural bodybuilding, there are guys out there who you'll see them and go, there's no way in hell he's natural. It's like, no, tested all the time. And you do want to see that. You in the same way that we want to see Usain Bolt run and break world records. Yeah. And I don't think he's on anything. I think he's as natural as the next sprinter. But what he is an absolute, genetic freak when it comes to that particular athletic endeavor. He is an incredible sprinter. Yeah. I believe, and again, this is coming from memory, I believe he makes the same number of footfalls in a race as any other sprinter, but he covers more ground with each stride. Which is, and I believe that's why he's so dominant in his particular races. And that's kind of what you want to see in natural athletics, especially when it comes down to things like, sprinting a particular distance or running a particular distance. It's like the fewer tactical parameters are in a sport, the more it comes down to the physiology of the athlete. And I think that's where you do want to see genetic outliers, because then you see someone who literally they can do something nobody else can, because they are just built for that kind of thing.
Which is what the Olympics is.
Yeah, in a lot of cases, for sure. Yeah. Shot put, javelin, all these kinds of things. It's like you're doing one task really, really well. Yeah. But that's also where you get, the most effect from performance enhancing drugs, because you can just focus in on that one thing. Yeah. In bodybuilding, it's muscularity and leanness. In strength sports, it's strength. In, athletics or endurance, it's VO2 max. So I think in those cases, you have to do what you can to keep cheating. If you can't get rid of cheating, which I don't think you can, giving people who cheat an incentive to compete elsewhere, and then just letting the free market decide on whether or not they think that's an acceptable thing. I think that might be the best middle ground.
No, I get that from a philosophical point of view, and from a purely entertainment gladiatorial point of view, the enhanced games, right?
Yeah.
No drug testing, go wild. I get that as well. That's like a logical extension of like the Colosseum. But how the fuck are they going to stop people from going hog wild and just taking way too much and collapsing on the field or in the ring or whatever event? I don't know what events they're doing, because I don't feel like if they're going to say, look, we're not going to test drugs, you know what people are like. People are going to be like, well, then fucking, I'm going to fucking 10x my dosage and just go absolutely mental. And there'll be people collapsing left, right, and center, won't there?
So you would protect athletes in the same way that you protect athletes in drag races and motorsports, in the same way that you protect people in anything that's inherently dangerous, which is accepting the risks, doing your best to mitigate them with open medical intervention, right? So, hey, doc, I'm taking 25 times the normal amount of testosterone that a human being is supposed to have.
Mm-hmm.
What are the potential side effects? Can you study me and make sure my heart doesn't explode in my chest? And the doctor will say, well, I can do this, this, and this, but you are taking a massive risk with that dose, right?
Yeah.
And you go, okay, I accept the risk. I'm an adult. It's worth it to me. In terms of the more barbaric and gladiatorial aspect that you bring up, I agree. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, it is a little bit gross to be like, hey, these people are sacrificing their longevity, their long and short-term health, and, potentially their later years in life,
Definitely.
also that they can achieve something for a glory that I think to the rest of us is a little bit like, it doesn't seem worth it to me. But then again, I'm not an elite level athlete. Like, obviously it's not worth it to me. It's not even worth it to me to do it naturally, let alone enhanced. So, I think at that point it becomes an issue of personal choice. But then again, I'm open to counter arguments against that. I don't know that you can protect people from themselves without fundamentally rescinding their capacity to choose freely.
That's an interesting philosophical quandary, I suppose.
Yeah.
I hadn't actually considered.
Because there are guys out there, sorry to interrupt, there are guys out there who don't compete on the bodybuilding scene, who are monstrous, and they are known to be monstrous. There's guys out there who don't even compete in strongman or strength sports, who are known to be monstrous, right? To a level where it's like, there's no way in hell he's doing that naturally. You can't do that naturally. No one ever has, even at the most elite levels of competition. So to be doing it at all means that you're very likely on something, a lot of something probably. But on top of that, to be doing it and not doing it in competition, just doing it for your own, your own entertainment is just like, wow. So there are guys out there really pushing the envelope, even without the desire for fame and fortune. Yeah. Now, they're not as common, but they are out there. They do exist. I see where the moral implication of incentivizing people to do that kind of thing for financial and social gain, that is a moral gray area as well. But yeah, no, I don't have any neat solution there.
I'm not saying there's a neat solution. I was more, I mean, I think philosophically, I think it's kind of hard to argue against what you're saying about personal choice. So I wasn't really saying about that. It was more the practicalities of it ever really happening. Like, for example, how many people have ever died at the Olympics? I mean, I don't know, but it must be vanishingly small. I know, for example, in the Premier League or in football in general, there's been a few collapses on the field, and it has generated like humongous headlines, and games have had to be called off, and everything's had to be cancelled, and it's a massive media frenzy. And that's just from one person collapsing during an event. If you have something like the enhanced games, where that is like a potential risk in every category suddenly, and let's say you do have a few people collapsing here, there, and like big broadcasters aren't going to want to be a part of that. So,
quite possibly.
Sponsors, ads, all of that stuff. They're not going to want their name associated with players collapsing right by their billboard. Drink Gatorade, and you got some guy flopping around on the floor. So I don't see how. Also, I noticed, by the way, it's an Australian who came up with the idea. So you've got a lot to answer for, my friend.
Classic us. I think that you've got a very good point there. I think I wouldn't underestimate the ghoulish aspect of humanity. I don't think that there's not an audience for that. But I also, I'd like to point out that the strongman games are, not to blow anyone's mind here, but those guys aren't just drinking green tea and eating hearty meals. And you don't see as many people dying from that as you might expect to. I think that there's two prongs to this. First of all, I don't think people realize the mitigating effect of negative health outcomes being insanely fit has. So I've read recently, and by recently I mean earlier this week, that some of the protective elements of being very, very fit may mitigate some of the negative elements of certain performance enhancing drugs. Not to say that you should take those drugs in order to be healthy, but to say that if you have been hugely healthy whilst taking them, you may have health outcomes that are not dissimilar to somebody who was simply unhealthy but natural.
Doesn't that make sense? I mean, even if we change performance enhancing drugs to like performance decreasing drugs, right? Let's change it and make it not athletes. Let's say you like to drink booze or something like that, something that actually decreases your performance.
Yep.
But you're very healthy. You keep yourself in very physical, fit condition. Then you will be able to deal with the alcohol in your system better.
That is completely true.
So it's kind of true for any exogenous, that's the term, isn't it? Substance that you take in. If the if the body it's going into is more fit and more healthy, you'll be more able to deal with it, right?
Yes, that seems to be what the evidence shows that I've seen. Yeah. So there's a protective mechanism. Funnily enough, I think it's Dr. Rhonda Patrick who mentioned recently on a podcast that one of the things you can do to mitigate the negative effects of alcohol is exercise regularly, is to be really fit, exercise, cardio, weights, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I know for a lot of, for all-cause mortality, being very physically fit, both in terms of resistance training and cardiovascular training, these have massively positive effects on all-cause mortality anyway. And that's been known for decades. That was old news when I did my degree, 15 plus years ago, however old I am now. So that's all very well understood, that exercise is incredibly potent in promoting healthful side effects. So I think that if you're
even only a little bit can actually make a massive difference, because so many people are just pretty sedentary and don't even do anything other than sit, work, walk to the shop, walk back, don't even raise their heart rate a little bit. And even just doing it a little bit is like a massive leap. And then if you're actually regularly working out and pushing yourself and stuff, then it's again another.
That's it. There's thresholds for the minimum effective dosages. So the last study that I read on step count, by the way, walking is not, from a sports science perspective, walking is not exercise. Yeah, it is exercise after a fashion, but walking is what we do to get from point A to point B. It's not something that you do to make yourself fit. Right. But even walking being a very low potency form of exercise, there's changes in all-cause mortality when you get up to like 6,000 steps per day. Yeah. And there's shifts when you get up closer to 10,000 steps per day.
Right, which is why that Kate caught on as a thing.
Exactly, yeah.
Because so even the threshold.
Yeah, exactly. Even something as easily accessible and low intensity as walking can have a positive effect on your health. Yeah. If you add in the recommended hour and 15 minutes or 115, I always just say 2 hours of cardio per week, steady state cardio. So not like sprints or anything like that. You can add that in, every fortnight or so if you want to. But for me, it's like if you can do 4 half-hour sessions or 2 1-hour sessions of just low-intensity, steady-state cardio, so the kind of jogging that you could have a conversation with the person jogging next to you, or just, incline treadmill in your house, bike ride, whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah.
It's about 120 minutes per week. You add in 2 full-body resistance training sessions per week. They don't really need to be much more than a half-hour a piece. Yeah. Maybe 45 minutes if you actually want to, put some hefty effort in. But really, you're looking at, you're not looking at much more than 4 hours of dedicated exercise per week to reach what I believe to be the minimum effective threshold for quite robust health outcomes. So it's not a massive ask. I mean, but I say that as somebody whose entire job and half their identity is exercise. So for some people, it is a massive
ask. But for some people, I think it feels like a massive ask, but actually, I think most people, if they're being honest with themselves, can find that time in the day to do it. Yes. I think maybe the incentive isn't always clear enough. Do you know off the top of your head, even roughly, like what the difference is doing this versus not doing this makes short term, but also like long term longevity, like for when you get older and protective your body and stuff like that?
Broadly. So for the getting older stuff, the difference is night and day. You're talking about the kind of health outcomes that are so robust for people who just exercise enough with a minimum effective dose, versus the same person in an alternate reality where they don't work out. The health outcomes on all cause mortality, so virtually all common diseases and ailments, lifestyle issues, comorbid issues like obesity resulting in other secondary issues like metabolic syndromes, diabetes, etc., osteopenia, osteoporosis. There's massive corollaries between even simple measures like grip strength and mortality, between bone density from resistance training and falls in the very elderly. And of course, we all kind of know that if an old person falls and goes to hospital, there's a very good chance they don't come out. So in terms of the minimum effective dose, I don't even know if it's as high as what I've stated. Like that 4 hours, two of cardio, 2 of resistance. I don't even know if that's actually the minimum effective dose. Because I'll be honest with you, I think I could deliver you a pretty robust stimulus for resistance training in as little as 5 or 10 minutes a day. Like I'll be 100% honest with you. If you come and train with me, I can pretty much kick your butt with push-ups, body weight rows, and split squats. That's not going to take more than, like, you're going to spend more time gasping for air because of how effective those exercises can be than you are actually doing the physical movement. So you can imagine that if you woke up every morning and you just said, or, before you get in the shower in the evening, you just said, I'm going to do 5 minutes of training. And you just alternated each day between push-ups, body weight rows, and split squats or walking lunges or something like that. You could very well mitigate a huge amount of potential health issues in the future just with a really small intervention.
And it's statistically significant amounts, isn't it? That's the
huge thing. I don't have the exact numbers because they're changing all the time.
But
it's massive. It's huge. It's like quitting smoking. It's like quitting alcohol. It's up there with all those things of being like, exercise has been known to be the big deal, aside from, pharmaceutical technologies, which will become more and more potent in the future. We've already got it coming out, as Ozempic and the like. But exercise is known to be a big, big deal in your health, right? And even for someone like me, who I don't consider myself to be a particularly health conscious person,
right.
There is a big part of me that pays attention to the health effects of exercise, because that is kind of that is the one thing that I do for my health, which is like, okay, so I am actually doing some real good stuff for my health. Great. So that way, when I go out and, have too many beers or whatever, it's like, okay, that was not a good idea, but at least I'm also, absolutely flogging myself in the gym every day kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what I tell myself before I go to sleep at night.
Is that one of the old wives' tales?
That's probably one of the old wives' tales. Yeah. No, but it is a fascinating area of study. Hopefully, it will become obsolete in the near future, because pharmaceutical technology will hopefully be able to get us to a point where exercise is a pill you take, kind of thing. Yeah, that would be nice. Yeah, maybe.
How would that work though? How would that? I mean, because we're nowhere near that right now, right? Like, if you take an oral steroid and you sit on your ass, you're not going to grow muscle.
It won't be an oral steroid. So steroids and steroid-like substances function indirectly on the pathways that stimulate certain adaptations.
Yeah.
So, for example, raising testosterone levels basically increases it also, on top of all the other things it does, it also increases your androgenic response in your muscles, so it hypertrophies your muscles.
Yeah, but you need to stimulate the muscles in order for that to happen.
You are better capable of recovering from exercise.
Yeah.
So you are going to get, basically you're going to be able to do more and recover quicker from exercise.
But you still have to do shit. You can't just sit in your chair. You can't just sit in your chair and grow.
Not necessarily. So to get to the level of a pro bodybuilder, you have to exercise. But if you're just a sedentary person, or if you're a person who doesn't really do a whole lot, I believe, and again, not a doctor, this is not my area of expertise, it's just an interest of mine. I believe that just boosting your testosterone levels can have a not insignificant effect on your muscularity and leanness without extra intervention, which is why it's so tantalizing to people. Because, you know, the idea of just injecting yourself once a week or twice a week or whatever it is, and getting some form of physique improvement and physical improvement, that's a pretty tantalizing thing.
Yeah.
The things that are more interesting at the moment are the weight loss drugs, the anti-obesity drugs, which are becoming ever more potent.
Wegovy, all of those things. Semaglutides,
yep. They're going to be very potent very soon. I know that there's at least one that is also pairing a next generation semaglutide with it works on the glucagon pathway in the body, so it's actually going to increase your metabolism as well as suppressing your appetite.
Which sounds pretty good.
For obesity, which is a massive issue around the world now, that's going to be a big deal. And you know, when we haven't even figured out what molecular machinery causes muscle growth at the moment. We don't actually know the innate processes that cause these adaptations. We just broadly know how to do them. Once we discover,
we can correlate, but we can't nail down causation.
We haven't nailed down the actual mechanism. We know broadly what the mechanism is. It's mechanical tension in the muscles. But we don't actually know, like we haven't found the little bit that goes
like in the chain. We know input, we know output, but there's some bits along the way that are like question mark.
Yeah, we're not quite at the point of fully understanding it. But once we understand it, you know, there will be a molecular switch that we can flick. I mean, we already know a little bit because you've got those cows and mice and dogs that are, myostatin deficient or whatever. So we do know a little bit of it. But once we get to a point of being able to manipulate it to the point that we're now manipulating our GLP-1 pathways, which is, I think it's a GLP-1 agonist, which is the semaglutides. But once we're at that point of manipulating those pathways, hopefully we'll be able to stimulate optimal fitness, muscularity, bone density, tendon resilience, cartilage capacity, all the different things that go into musculoskeletal health. Hopefully at some point in the near future, we'll be able to manipulate those to keep people healthy without necessarily requiring time-consuming exercise interventions. But until that happens,
it's the best one.
You need to get to the gym, yeah. Not a lot, not a crazy amount. You don't have to dedicate your life to it like some of us have. But there is definitely
and even also, like, for anyone listening who's like, I don't want to go to the gym, like you said, you can do body weight. Every single muscle in your body can be targeted by a body weight exercise.
100%, yeah. Well, stuff in the gym is really just convenience and for people who want to push really, really hard. I'm almost, I won't say I'm exclusively doing body weight stuff at the moment, because that's not true, but I focus primarily on body weight exercise. And I've made some of the best progress that I've made in the 15 plus years that I've been training, because it's not about, your body weight is just a form of resistance. It's just a form of weight. But you pick up a 10 kilo dumbbell at the gym, or you manipulate the mechanics of your body to apply 10 kilos worth of resistance to your muscle. The muscle doesn't care. It's just, it just feels tension. That's all it does. So for people who are not interested in anything as intense as, bodybuilding or strength sports, in order to keep yourself fit and healthy, you really only need a handful of exercises, and you only really need to do them once or twice a week, or if you're being super minimalist about it, twice a week for however long it takes to do a couple of sets. Yeah, it's really, the dosage is really quite low when you're not looking for elite level outcomes. If you're just looking for minimum health outcomes, the dosage is really low.
I like the way the lingo is dosage, because I think it's starting to happen in this country a bit, where people who are obese go to the doctor, and one of the things the doctor prescribes is exercise.
Yes.
It's a dosage. It's have some exercise, take some of this. It's called exercise. Do it. Yep. That's one of the best things you can do.
Absolutely. I wish they'd be a little bit more precise with what they tell people, because I've had a few friends who are doctors in this country, and I've often talked to them about, you know, the things they recommend when they do recommend exercise. Of course, the doctors that I know are, you know, well, one of them is the wife of a physiotherapist. So she knows quite a bit about exercise. But there's a lot of doctors that I've spoken to who perhaps don't have the full ball on what the dosages need to be.
Yeah, because I think it's not a lot of it is taught currently in their,
it's not.
In their training, even though they have so many years of schooling. You'd think they'd find a bit more time to put that in the syllabus, but
they've got so much to cover already in medicine. Medicine is hard enough without having to do more. I think what can happen is or what could potentially happen is you have medical professionals who then refer on to exercise professionals. You know, it's not, you don't require a trainer, but you might require, like in the way that you don't require a nutritionist to lose weight. But if you're really having a hard time losing weight, getting a nutritionist can really help you, because there's a lot of misinformation in the world. And there's a lot of people whose entire job and entire income rely on convincing consumers that things are more complex than they actually are, or by convincing people that there's some sort of original sin they need to atone for, whether it's gluten or carbohydrates or whatever. Whereas the actual truth of the matter is all this stuff is really simple, and the vast majority of it is completely free. And therefore there's nothing to be earned from it. Because if you just tell someone, hey, if you just go for a walk, and then maybe when you're really used to walking for an hour, maybe jog for a little bit of it, and then just alternate between walking and jogging, and then just eventually, after a couple of years, you'll mostly jog. And then, hey, you're doing 2 hours of cardio a week, and you didn't really have to do a whole lot except get up and start putting one foot in front of the other. You know, but how do you earn money off that? That advice is probably quite sound advice, you know, for something flippant off the top of my head, but you can't. Where am I earning money off that?
Well, yeah. So that's why a system like the NHS is preferable over a privatized medical system, for those outcomes, because then we don't have. But a system like America, where it's privatized, then they'll be going ham on the Ozempic and whatever else is coming down the pipeline.
Which is good and bad, because we need the consumer base to push the medication research forward, and with financial incentive that is possible. But then again, when it comes to patient outcomes, if there's no money to be made on something, but that is the right thing to tell that patient, you're not incentivized to take the financially I don't have a word for this, bereft way. There's no money to be made. So it's, you know, you don't make any money from saying, you know, have a couple salads and some fruit and maybe choose a leaner cut of meat with your meal and go for a walk after dinner. Like, you don't get money for that. So pushing a pill can be more lucrative for you. But then again, for the people who really need the pill, you know, it's like gluten-free stuff. There's a lot of people who are celiac or gluten intolerant, but there's nowhere near as many people who are celiac as there are people consuming gluten-free.
Right.
And it's kind of a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, you've got people who don't need to be eating gluten-free, but the people who do need to be eating gluten-free, they're really grateful that everyone else is on the bandwagon, because now there's a bunch of cool gluten-free options.
Yeah. My friend's dad is actually celiac, right? So back in the day, he used to get prescribed bread on the NHS.
Yep.
It was disgusting chalk. Weird package, like government issued gluten-free bread. And now he's living in a paradise of options where like very close to the real thing. Sometimes, basically, if someone served you it up, you wouldn't know, and that's how good it's got. And that's just because there's a lot of interest and a lot of investment in it, isn't there?
That's right. It's just the free market at play. So you kind of need that there as a backup to make sure that just to make sure that things get pushed in a particular direction. Yeah, it's a weird one because the NHS is such a great system, but there are certain things where if Britain was an island, it is an island, but if it was a medical island where it wasn't allowed any outside input, it'd be interesting to know how quickly the NHS would be able to develop certain drugs without the financial incentive driven by a free market medical system. You know, that to me is a very interesting thing because from a patient care perspective, it seems to work, you know, at least very well. You know, I've used the NHS quite a few times since I've been here. It's a good system. I like it. But from a more holistic perspective, is it a place that also, on top of being decent for patient care, is it also a great place for drug development? Is it also a great system for drug development? Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't work in that industry. But what I do know is that there are a lot of industries which are very well driven by the free market. And, you know, drugs could be one of them, maybe.
I think Cambridge are quite involved and Oxford are quite involved because one of the early COVID vaccines was it Oxford AstraZeneca, one of the very first ones that was really I think it was Oxford, but it could be Cambridge. They were really heavily involved in getting that ready, trialed and out to market like very quickly.
Yeah, I'm sure they have the capability of doing it. You guys have some of the best educated people in the world in the UK. It's more whether or not you're incentivized to do it. That's the big difference. You're entirely capable. I mean, you're Britain. You're capable of all types of stuff, you know.
Right,
the incentive structure.
So obviously, a global pandemic is immediate incentive huge and shitloads of money and go.
Yeah, do whatever you need to.
If that's not there, then does the money dry up or where does it come from? I don't know. It's new dawn in this country, so we'll see if it's any good. I got a phone call from my local council for the first time ever, despite having lived in Brixton for ages, because I assume because we've got a new government, they called me up being like, is there anything that needs fixing around your way? I was like, wow, okay,
that's nice. Yeah,
nice to hear from you. First time in a decade or whatever it is. Like,
that's amazing.
We might have some money. We might be able to fix some of the things. I was like, "Can you get rid of my crappy neighbor?" They were like,
No, that's good. Yeah, very interesting. Did you give them any feedback?
Yeah, I've got a leaky gutter that leaks right out my back door. It's been there absolutely ages. I convinced a guy once from the council to come round, and he looked at it. He went, "It is leaking," and he took a photo of it. And that was it.
That's such a great way to convince people that you're going to do something whilst giving you an excuse to leave. Is just to take a picture of something and go, "Yeah, no, you're right there. Click. See you later, mate." Are you going to fix it, or is this a photo opportunity for you guys? You're taking the before photos, and then when a new government gets voted in, you'll fix it up and do the after photos.
How professional do you think he just deleted it and moved on, or do you think that's stored somewhere at least?
You know what? I think they're trained ventriloquists. He didn't even take a picture. He just said click. He just made the shutter sound with his mouth, and that's you were convinced. Wow,
I would have bought it. I needed to hear that click. That was my placebo, just the Manchurian candidate response. I was like, "Oh, it's good. Okay, good. He's clicked. Everything's fine now."
Yep, they're going to fix it. So that's amazing. I getting a call from the council is I would have been slightly nervous getting a call from the council, like, "Oh, what do I have to pay? What have I missed? What payment have I missed?"
Yeah, not delivered to me. Yeah. It was good.
So they're flush with cash, are they?
I have no idea. I mean, hopefully the news that just came out the other day. What day is it today? So that I don't so I date this, so 10th of
10th.
July, is that there's going to be more devolved powers to the cities and to the regions of the UK. So like Northern Ireland, Wales, Scotland are going to get a bit more of their own independent powers, and also the mayors, the city mayors, are going to get more power to delegate to local things. So
Wow.
could be, which I think would be probably a good thing.
It sounds great, but it's such a strange thing that the more left-wing government is giving more states rights, because whenever you hear about states' rights in conversation, it's always with, well, at least for me, it's always with regard to American politics, and that's the conservative perspective. But then the Labour government gets elected, and that's what they're enacting in the UK, and that's fascinating to me. You know, not to comment one way or another on whether or not it's a good idea. It sounds like a great idea. I mean, especially if it hasn't been done recently. You know, trying something new or going back to something old that worked in the past. That's plenty good idea, especially when you're new into it and you want to, you know, get to making changes. A great way to do it is to just say, okay, guys, you've now got the power to fix your own problems.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I wonder how it splits left right, because I mean I know I'm aware of sort of the culture war way it's used in the US. You know, like the federal government telling us what to do. It definitely happened a lot with the Roe v. Wade debate, of people being like, you know, don't tell us what to do. Down here we do things differently, kind of thing. I think it's less of a wedge issue here, which is probably a good thing.
It is, yeah.
Not like we need more of those. I'm not sure it neatly maps on to left, right.
No, it shouldn't. No, it shouldn't. Because left and right is a massive oversimplification of politics.
Yeah. It just and it just comes from where the people sat in the original French Parliament. That's all it was. Yeah. The more liberal people were on the left side, and the more conservative people were on the right side, and then we got left wing, right wing, and then we end up in this ridiculous situation that we're in.
Yeah.
It makes more sense that like the mayor of Newcastle would know better how to deal with Newcastle's problems than some suit down in Westminster.
Of course, yeah.
It just logically
definitely.
Like it, unless you've got a shitty corrupt mayor or someone who's not engaged. But like taking those variables out, it just makes sort of more sense. So maybe we do have a bit more money because of that. But
absolutely. Well, it also maps well into the notion of democracy as being self-governance, you know, because if you are self-governing, then the more localized the people governing you are, the more your vote counts towards who you select to govern you.
Right.
You know, if you're within a voting bundle of several million, your vote counts far less than if you're in a voting bundle of 7,000.
Right.
Several thousand.
There's a principle called democratic deficit, which is like how democratic is your system that you live in. And obviously the UK electoral system is first past the post, and that is in no way the most democratic of the electoral systems.
It's a strange one.
It's a very strange one. No one's going to get rid of it, because anyone who gets in on it is like, oh, it worked very well for us, actually.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That's incentive structure again, isn't it?
Well, exactly. But once they're in, then they can sort of devolve power to a more local level, and that is closer to direct democracy. So that does lessen the democratic deficit, even if they're keeping that system in place. So that's probably a good thing. I'm reminded of that Churchill quote that democracy is the worst form of government apart from all the rest.
Yeah.
And
great quote.
It is a good one. And you look at what's happened in the US with they've just gone and given themselves a king. How long did it last? 2024, 1776. So they had a good few hundred years. But now they've got their own king again. So well done.
It's utterly ridiculous, but it's interesting to watch it happen. And from a more stepping back and being as philosophical as I can be while still fundamentally just being an up-jump meathead, it's interesting to watch a country that has a foundation that America has, which was on the fundamental, freedom and liberty of the individual, to opt into what looks from the outside to be some sort of, I don't want to use the word dictatorship,
no,
but there is definitely quasi. there are elements of dictatorship, at least in the language being used, if nothing legislated
Nothing else.
yet. So
Immune
it's very
from prosecution. That just
that's
sounds
wild.
dictatorial. That just sounds dictatorial. There's no way.
Why would you want your leader to be immune from prosecution to the laws of your own country that he's supposed to lead?
You wouldn't want anyone to be.
Should that person not be a shining example of exactly the kind of citizen that you want to be throughout your society?
Yeah. And shouldn't they sort of, as they go about their business, be thinking, should I do this? Because it might be illegal. That's probably a good thing to have in your mind, because that's what we have in our mind the whole time when we walk around. We're like, oh, that fucker just did that, but it would be illegal too. So I'll just, that's probably fine.
Is it worth going to jail over?
Yeah. But if you don't, if you no longer have that little gate in your mind, suddenly it's like, fuck it, they're not going to send me to jail, are they?
No. Every corner store from here to the train station is going to be ransacked for chocolates the moment that happens to me. I'm just walking in and taking all your Snickers bars, mate. You're done. You're not going to make another cent from Snickers.
That's already happening, isn't it? That's happening in the States as well. They've got that like minimum theft thing where it's just like, just let people steal a bit. What?
It's a weird system. That's a weird system as well, because it's this notion that you won't tax corporations certain amounts, but then you could use that taxation to increase your welfare state, and you could provide more for those people who are most incentivized to steal. Instead, you're just going to let them steal, which still has the same impact on the bottom line of the corporations. It's just less structured, and you're less likely to actually do a good job of helping those people, because some of those people who are incentivized to steal won't steal because they find it morally repugnant.
Yeah.
So they're still suffering.
They lose out.
But they're suffering because they're being good people, which is what you want to incentivize in the people in your society. The people who behave the best get treated the worst. And it's like, well, where's my incentive to be the best then? You could be the most positively predisposed person in the world, but eventually you are going to reach a point where you go, actually, I'm just being an idiot by abiding by the rules. That's because nobody else is. Yeah.
That is the biggest risk that you can take with the society, for sure. Yeah.
It's a strange route to go down, and I mean, America is said to be the great experiment, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it is interesting to watch. It's just that I do feel for the people who suffer under it. Not that they're the worst off in the world. Americans are very, very lucky to be American. Yeah. Same way we're lucky to be British and Australian, respectively. But it's an interesting thing to watch. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'd be far less interested if we got more news from other countries with actual things happening, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So what's your prediction for the England game tonight? I know you're a big football fan.
I actually think that one of the players is going to have a cardiac episode right there on the field, and they're going to call the game off. Yeah, I hope it doesn't happen, but that's what I think will happen.
Just to tie up that loop that we started earlier. Eight Olympic/Paralympic athletes and 5 horses have died as a result of competing.
As a result of competing, so not including all the dead pigeons that they shoot off the tracks.
Not including the dead pigeons, and not including the Munich massacre, not including other horses. But actual just competing. Look, they're quite spread out over time. The most recent was Tokyo 2020. Suicide. Well, I'm not sure if that counts while competing. No, hold on. This guy was hit by a taxi. That doesn't really count. Not while he was competing. That really would be an event.
And what's this men's giant salmon? Slalom.
Men's giant slalom. Men's giant slalom. Slalom. Slalom's the one where you go zoom, 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 zoom when you're skiing.
Yeah.
He was skiing on a recreational slope. This is not. Oh,
he's
this
a
is the
team
other
doctor.
deaths. Sorry, this is the one jury.
I was going to say.
Boxing. You would expect that, but again, it was before. No, 3 days after losing his bout. Okay.
Blood poisoning. I wonder if that was a lot of body shots messed with his kidneys or his liver.
Right, and it wasn't able to deal with. Yeah.
Maybe, I'm not sure. I don't know. Blood poisoning is normally infection, though, isn't it? That's interesting.
So this guy was killed during a demonstration event.
Gliding.
Stephenson, gliding, downhill skiing, Ross and Milne, but that was in practice.
Yeah.
This one was also in practice. This was in practice. This was in practice. They're all in practice, apart from this one in 1936 Berlin. Oh, classic Olympics.
Yeah.
That's Hitler's Olympics.
That was the Hitler Olympics, yeah. I was wondering when we get to Hitler in this podcast.
Yes.
We've been so good.
To come up. Should we quickly bring up pedos? There we go. Done.
Yay, we've hit the trifecta.
So actually, at the event of the Olympics, we've never had a death during competition.
It doesn't. I mean, it does surprise me just by sheer coincidence and chance. But when you think about it, even including performance-enhancing drugs, these are some of the fittest and healthiest people on the planet.
Right.
So you would expect a lower number of untimely demises in this particular sample, because they're going to be insanely fit and healthy for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these horses have died.
I just read euthanized on every line, and I didn't realize you'd switch to. I did not realize you'd switch to horses because I was just reading the word, and I was like, they used to euthanize athletes. That's insane. From a broken leg, we can fix that. We've been able to fix that for centuries.
I'm afraid, sir, your leg is broken. It's the end of the road for you.
And as a runner, you have no other utility in society, and as you know, we don't keep people without utility, so we're going to have to put you down.
I take back what I said. There are two people who died in competition during the Olympics. Francisco Lazaro in 1912 Stockholm from overheating.
Yep.
Electrolyte imbalance, and Knud Enemark Jensen in 1960s Rome from heat stroke, who was a cyclist.
Very similar causes of death.
Yeah.
Yep. Interesting. Endurance is the
endurance.
The one. Yep.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you have to be super duper careful that you don't simply put yourself in a position where you've thrown your body so far out of whack that it can't handle the thing that you would do any day of the week under other circumstances when it comes to endurance. Yeah, I've seen some people actually recently doing a challenge where they'll run a marathon without any water or electrolytes or anything
I've ever heard.
And I'm just like, I get that you want to challenge yourself mentally. Putting your body through that is unnecessary in my mind. Yeah. Like if you really want to challenge yourself, there's ultra marathons,
right?
Or you could just run a marathon and get a better time.
Yeah, a marathon's already hard enough. Like
these are people for whom a marathon is par for the course. These are people who are who come from families of athletes, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
But I just think
then they should know better. They should know how important hydration is, right? It's like
I don't know. It's one of the guys is a guy. It's a strange one, yeah. One of the guys is a guy I very much respect as an athlete. He beat the world record for the most pull-ups done in 24 hours. He held the world record, 8,100, I believe he got, which is quite a few. But he held the record. He held the record for less than 2 days, I believe, before an Australian lad took it back. But yeah, he's no slouch. Like, this guy is a bit of a beast. But I just think that doing an endurance, doing a marathon without hydration, I mean, obviously it can be done. It just seems like a not particularly good idea.
No,
maybe if you're in a super cold climate, perhaps it's not so bad, but I wouldn't take that risk.
No, I think
personally.
I read somewhere that running a marathon is such a long endurance event that it is deleterious on your body, no matter how fit you are, because it's just such an ask for your body to do, that it just does damage you. So if that is true, which sounds like it is.
Is this the ultra?
Just a normal marathon, because that's 28 miles of running. And it's just the wear and tear is just undeniable at that point. So it just does damage you.
Yeah, it depends on your conditioning, and
the way I know I haven't checked it. The way they was phrased was that no matter how fit you are, it's just that much of an endurance event that like you are going to do a certain amount of damage. I'm not saying permanent damage.
Yeah.
But
I mean, that's entirely possible. I've not read anything on the topic. It's an arbitrary number. It's based purely on the distance between two places in Greece.
Yeah.
So right. it's not, it's not like it's a number set by an authority organization that's like, okay, we're going to pick the best distance for people to run to show how fit they are without them having to run any further. Yeah. Which maybe that's the future of endurance running. But I don't know. This even though it's within my wheelhouse, it's not my area of study or interest really.
No, but it looks like your Australian guy's been beaten by a Japanese.
He has, yeah, recently.
So 8,940 is now the world record. Kenta Adachi.
Yeah, I think we'll see. I think we'll see 10,000 before too long. Yeah. I think we're closing in on 10,000 in a day, which is absolutely amazing. I don't know if the people listening do many pull-ups, but I'm something of a pull-up fiend. I love doing pull-ups.
I don't know what you're suggesting about my listenership.
I don't know if they partake.
But they all do.
But I love doing pull-ups, and I'm about to go do some outside actually after this. After another thing, but yeah, today I will. And I like to do them weighted. So I like to add extra weight to myself and do them like that. But when I don't do them with weight and I try to go for as many reps as I can, I'm a pretty heavy dude. Getting double digits is a struggle for me. The notion of, if I were to, and I've done this before, I've set a timer for an hour. Yeah. And I've done a rep every minute for an hour. I've done 2 reps every minute for an hour. I've done 3 reps every minute for an hour. I did once try to do 4 reps every minute for an hour.
That's a lot.
And it was too difficult. Now, I was heavier. I was about 10 kilos heavier than I am now. But it was too difficult for me to keep doing 4 every minute for, more than 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And in order to get 10,000 in 24 hours, I believe you have to be able to do 7 pull-ups per minute every minute without much leeway. I believe it's 10,080 or 10,018 or something like
that. So what sum am I doing? So 10,000 and divided by, it's 24 hours.
Yeah, so if you go 7 by
416 per hour.
Yeah. So if you were to do 7, if you were to do 7 a minute, 7 a minute every minute without breaks. So you can imagine if you were going for a world record, that means you've got no bathroom break, you've got no break to have food, you've got no break to do anything else, except for the time that you have to rest after doing your 7 repetitions. So if you're going for that world record, you're probably going to start with trying to get some reps in the basket. You want to get 12 hours down and have more than 5,000 done if you're aiming for 10,000 a day.
You don't want the back end to be bigger than the front end.
No, and so it's not the number of reps you do; it's the fact that you have to do a certain number so frequently in order to populate that time frame with repetitions. So it's a really, really difficult ask. It's not an easy thing to do. And I find it fascinating, not because I particularly want to do it myself, but just because I know what it's like to do pull-ups. I'm not a jogger. I don't do that kind of stuff. So, for someone to be doing that many pull-ups in 24 hours, I'm like, that's unfathomable to me. That's something I can relate to, and it does make you want to do them a little bit because you kind of think it can't be that hard.
I know. I've got the bar downstairs. Come on, I can do. I can get 7.
It can't be that hard. It's
7
that
in
hard.
a minute. That's fine.
7. Yeah, but then every minute,
and then
for 24
minute
hours.
5, I'll be like, "Wow, this is."
Minute 2, minute 2, mate.
Minute 2.
Even if you can bang out 10 solid clean reps in a single set, you got to think. Right, I've done 10 repetitions. Maybe at best that takes me 20 seconds. That's 2 seconds per rep, right? I've got 40 seconds to rest, and then I have to do it again.
Stuff.
And then you have to do it again. And if you slow down, you get less rest. And if you speed up, you probably be more fatigued. So it's a bit of a mind fuck, really. But yeah, it's one of the most. It's the most I've ever found endurance athletics interesting.
Yeah.
So for me, this is a wild ride for me, because normally, the idea of watching a marathon and just I'm not interested. Unless I know someone in the marathon, then I'm very interested.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think I'm going to go. I think you've encouraged me. I've got to ride my bike today anyway. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to go do some pull-ups. I'm going to see if I can break my own world record, which is probably around 20.
Nice. That's a solid amount. Yeah. That's good.
I'm not the biggest guy. Right. Have you got a message to leave people with? I think you'll feel like you've given a lot of advice today, none of it medical. Don't follow any of it, but also do follow it, but also do your own research.
Definitely do your own research and see a doctor, and do not listen to anything I say ever, because I don't know anything. A message for people.
Yeah.
As somebody who has at multiple points in their life been more overweight than is healthy,
okay,
the amount of exercise that you can do sustainably or consistently is the right amount. And it doesn't matter how little or how much it is, because without consistent application of stimuli, your body does not hold on to adaptations.
Right.
So if you start out super gung-ho, like trying to break the world records for pull-ups, you're probably going to stop. But if you just start out with a couple extra steps per day, that's a really good place to start.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, that's a nice positive bit of info.
That might be the most positive thing I've ever said on one of your podcasts.
I think so, yeah. For counterbalance, just sit wanking and eating popcorn until you die. That's the
alternatively, don't worry about it. You could be hit by a truck tomorrow. Do you really want to have DOMS whilst getting hit by a truck? That sounds awful.
Truck hit DOMS. We found the title for the episode. All right, mate. Lovely. All right.
Good seeing you.
Take care. Thanks for listening to the show. If you've enjoyed it, please give us 5 stars and consider becoming a subscriber, and maybe even supporting us on Patreon. Really, really, really helps me continue making this show. If you haven't enjoyed it, then you can fuck off. Many, many thanks to Nils Hennis-Steer for the amazing music, and to Dave Fox for the cool artwork. Please keep coming back every week for more Bliss of the Abyss.
Message 1.